So, what's the one thing that's practically guaranteed our survival for thousands of years, but right now it feels like it's kind of slipping through our fingers? Well, we're talking about connection. You know, that deep, undeniable need that every single one of us shares.
And that brings up a really big question for our time. I mean, in a world that's more technologically connected than ever before, are we actually losing the basic art of, well, living together?
To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to look in three totally different directions. First, we'll look back, way back, into our evolutionary past to see how we're actually wired. Then we'll jump forward into our architectural future to see how we can literally build a better reality. And finally, we're going to look right at the screens in front of us to unpack how the stories we watch shape our whole idea of what community even is.
All right, so first up, let's dig into why this whole connection thing isn't just a nice to have. It's an essential part of our human operating system. So where does this deep need for connection even come from? Well, the answer is embedded right in our culture. And look, when I say culture, I don't just mean museums and opera, right? I'm talking about the unwritten rules, the shared stories, basically the entire blueprint for our lives that gets handed down from one generation to the next. It's kind of like the software that runs on our biological hardware. And speaking of our hardware, it's pretty wild when you think about it. It's like we won the evolutionary lottery. Three key things had to happen for us to be here right now. First, we developed these massive brains. But that meant we were born super vulnerable. So that led to a really, really long childhood where we're completely dependent on others to survive. And for any of that to work, we had to get amazing at cooperating. We didn't survive by being the strongest or the fastest. We survived by being the best collaborators on the planet. And you can see this exact principle in action absolutely everywhere, across all of time and space. It doesn't matter if it's a small, tight-knit tribal community or a huge, sprawling modern city. The fundamental drive is exactly the same. Yeah, the architecture changes, the technology changes, but that core impulse, our human need to organize and connect, that's always there. But that brings us to a big modern paradox, right? If we are so deeply hardwired for connection, why do so many of us feel so disconnected? Let's take a look at what the data says. Okay, so to figure this out, researchers did this massive review of studies all about community. They basically used software to scan all the keywords and pull out the most common themes. And the result was, well, it was striking. In the biggest, most prominent cluster of related words, what do you think they found? Loneliness and aging. Yep. In the world of academic research, those two ideas are now deeply, almost inseparably linked. And this heat map, wow, it illustrates the point perfectly. See, the brighter the spot, the more often that topic showed up in the research. And what's burning brightest? Right there in the middle? Yep, you guessed it. The data is practically screaming at us that this isn't just some vague feeling people have. It's a measurable, massive challenge in our society today. Okay, so we've established the problem, and it's a big one. But here's the good news. People are thinking really hard about solutions. And one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal, it's design. Because design isn't just about making things look pretty. It's really about solving human problems. And thoughtful architecture, that can be a direct weapon against social isolation. The way we shape our spaces, our homes, our neighborhoods, it can either push us apart, or it can actively, intentionally bring us together. It can create that sense of community, security, and support that we all crave. So how do we actually do this? Well, research points to a pretty clear formula. Step 1, you have to prioritize affordability. You just can't have a real community without a real mix of people. Next, you intentionally design shared spaces. Think about things like communal kitchens or workshops or gardens, places that make bumping into your neighbors a natural, positive part of your day. But at the same time, you have to make sure everyone has their own private space to retreat to. That's crucial. And finally, the site itself has to be picked carefully to make sure it's accessible and fits into the wider neighborhood. It's really like a blueprint for belonging. But building better spaces, that's only half the battle. Because it's not just about the physical communities we create. It's also about the idea of community that we all hold in our minds. And that idea, it's hugely shaped by the stories we tell and, of course, the media we consume every day. Okay, just take documentary filmmaking, for example. You've basically got two big approaches. On one hand, you have what's called cinema verite. It's raw, it's observational, often with a handheld camera, and it makes you feel like you're right there, a fly on the wall. On the other hand, you have a much more stylized approach, where every single shot is carefully composed, lit, and colored to create a very specific mood. Now, neither one is more true than the other, but they give you a completely different feeling about the reality you're watching.
Filmmakers have this entire toolkit they use to build a story without a single word of narration. They use something called environmental portraiture, which is just using someone's surroundings to tell you who they are. They use juxtaposition, putting two different images next to each other to create a whole new, often complex meaning. And of course, they use color theory to make you feel something. Warm tones for intimacy, cool tones for calm or even isolation. It's like this silent language that's constantly shaping how we understand what we're seeing.
Just look at this incredible photo. This is a perfect example of environmental portraiture in action. We don't need anyone to tell us a single thing about this family, do we? The snow, the forest, their clothing, their reindeer, the whole environment tells us this rich story about their connection to nature, their heritage, their entire way of life. This picture doesn't just show us a community, it explains it.
So all of this leaves us with one final thought. We know we're wired for connection. We can see the modern challenge of loneliness right in front of us. We actually have the tools to design better communities. And now you have the tools to see how these stories are told. So the next time you're watching a film or a show about a group of people, I want you to look a little closer. Ask yourself, what is the camera really telling me here? What will you see?